and we can trim this straggler on afterward, but what I would strongly recommend is that instead of trimming it later, just go down in, because we want to create, this is one of the chains, so we want to create 2 double crochets into the same gap that you just started that in. So just going into the same hole, okay, put that straggler down on the line and wrap the material through it like that, just pull it through, and then 2 and 2, and that was a double crochet. So if you still have more straggler, just do it again. So just making sure it's trapped in, and you want a total of 3. So the chaining counted as 1 and then 2 double crochets. We now then want to chain 1, and now this is where it kind of gets really interesting, like the petal shape, you see everything's in groups of 2s. So now you just chained 1, so just jump over 2 of the actual spokes as per se, and just jump over and put in 3 double crochets. Okay, just like so. So now we want to chain 1 again. Okay, and this is where we change the circle to an actual square in this point. So now we want to jump over 2 more spokes, and this will be the corner piece. Now you'll see that this is where we finished off the other material. We want to kind of trap that in a position as much as we can, making sure that the white is wrapping around that string that we weaved in the edge, and that helps it really from falling apart later. So now that is considered a corner, so I call it the 3-2-3 configuration. So 3 double crochets, 2 chains, and 3 double crochets, and let's go 3 more into the same hole. And that's causing it to turn a corner. Like so. So now we want to chain 1 again, and I call it the runway. Then the runway for me is any point of a granny square where you're not actually turning. So we're going to put 3 double crochets, okay, and now we're going to chain 1, and we're now back on a corner again. So jumping over 2 on the spokes, and just double crochet again for your 3-2-3 configuration. So 3 double crochets, 2 chains, and 3 double crochets into the same hole for another corner piece. Okay, chain 1, and now going on the runway, which is the piece in between the corners, jumping over 2 again, and double crocheting 3 more times. Okay, and now chain 1 and back onto another corner, so we want to jump over another 2. One and 2. And then the 3-2-3 configuration to make the square. And now we want to chain 1 again, and we're in the center again. And this is why it was so important that you made sure you had 16. So we're putting the 3 double crochets into the spot, and it was so important that you actually had the 16 in there, because you'll end up with an odd number at this point if you don't. Now we're going to finish off, and so we chain 1, and when we started with 3 double crochets and then 3, because this part is the starting of a corner. It's like so. So this, when we come back around, we're finishing off that same corner. So for 3 double crochets inside that corner, and then to finish the corner, right, it's not complete yet because you need to put 2 chains. And now slipping your, it's called the slip stitch, just slip your hook into the top of the first chain that we did, pulling it through and through. And therefore you have that done. So let's move on to your second round of white. Okay, so we just finished here, and now we're doing the second rotation of the white, and this is like it would be normal crochet or granny square. So let's chain up your 3. So 1, 2, and 3. And now this is part, remember what I said, we just finished off this corner over here. So we always start on the one side of the corner, work our way around, and finish it off on the corner. So just double crochet going into the same gap that you just made, and put 2 double crochets. And so with the chaining of the 3 and the 2 double crochets, that actually equals 3. So now we want to chain 1 and work our way along the runway. So where there's a gap, just put in 3 double crochets. Okay, and now we are still in the runway, so chain 1 and into the next hole. Okay, and now we are on a corner, so chain 1 and do your 3 2 3 configuration. So 3 double crochets, 2 chains, and 3 double crochets. Okay, and now we're back on the runway again, so let's chain 1 and going across. Okay, so that was 3 in that one, chain 1, 3 in the next one. Granny squares are really simple to do. And we're now back on the corner, so chain 1 and going into the 3 2 3 configuration for the next corner. So it was 3 double crochets, 2 chains, 3 double crochets. Okay, chain 1, going on to the runway. So again, this is the 3 in a row. Okay, chain 1, going into the next one for another 3. Chain 1, we're back on another corner. So how do you know when you're actually at the last corner? It's very obvious because the next row is actually going to be in your way, so you won't be able to cross it without knowing about it. So that's corner, so that was 3, 2, and 3 configuration. You need those 2 chains in order to make that corner successful, and if you do 3 then it gets pretty sloppy, so if you did the 3 3 3. So we're back on the runway, and this is the final before coming back to the other side, and we're gonna cast off at the end of this line as well, because we're now ready to reinsert the green back into position. So 3, and then chain 1 going into the next one, which is part of the runway. So with every rotation of your granny square, you're actually growing it significantly on all sides, which actually make your project grow pretty fast. So we're on the final. This is where we started over here. We're on the final, completing the final corner. So we're going to put in 3. Okay, and now to finish it completely is chain 2, and we want to do a slip stitch into the top of the one that we started with. Pulling it through and through. So let's begin to cast off. I always just turn over my hand, put in my fancy dancy scissors, and I pull out the yarn, and this is exactly what I do. I flip it over toward the back of the project, and now I use my 2 fingers and I pinch it, and I pull in the yarn underneath so that I continually have that loop up there. So it's now back through the front, and I want to push it back through that actual loop again, causing it to rotate around itself. So it's kind of securing itself onto itself. I will then stick in my hook into the actual corner, pulling it back out. And now what we want to do, the whole point when you're going to cut it is that you want to make sure that your straggler at least gets past the first gap along the runway. So let's so I pushed it back. We're going to go in the top of this stitch here, and we're just going to pull the material through it, throw it back over, next stitch, pull it through, pull it back, through, and now what I need you to do is just wrap it around this actual gap area itself. And because you're working with the green up into the gapping areas, the green, when it goes into that spot, is really going to secure this loose straggler into position. And because the way that you tied it in the beginning here, this thing will not unravel. So you can either, I would wait before you start trimming these things and wait just until your final square. you get the green, and then you can just be safely starting to trim any loose strings as per se. So let's move on to the next part. Okay, so now we want to reintroduce the green to go back around the outside just like we did before. So let's start off with a slip knot. Okay, so wrapping around your finger, back over the forward, and then back, pushing up and around. And slip in your hook again and pull it snug. So what I want you to do is that this is where we finished off, and the reason why you can see this, and I've addressed this in a video before, when you're finishing off, it looks tighter than the rest. But the neat thing about it is because this is part of a larger blanket, this whole seam area actually will be hidden. So it really doesn't matter so much. But I do it for my own security, is that I never start my rotation on this particular corner. I always choose something else. So just rotate it to wherever you feel. Now just slip in your hook into the actual corner slot of any other corner. Okay. And now taking your straggler and your yarn, putting it onto your hook from behind, and pulling it through, and using your fingers pull the slip knot over. Okay, so that was 1. So we want a total of 3 chains. So let's grab in the material and the straggler again, pulling it through for 2. Okay, and if there's more straggler, you can pull it through. You will find after doing quite a few squares that you will have nailed down exactly how long that straggler needs to be in order to get it to look like it is right now, instead of having to worry about burying it. So again, this is just like a regular corner granny square. We're going to start off. That is also considered 1. The chaining is considered 1 double crochet. So this is 1 double crochet added and 2. So the chaining and the 2 actually equal 3, if that makes any sense. And now we're on the runway, so chain 1, going into the next slot for 3 double crochets in a row. So make sure you get your square completely done before you start trimming any strings. It just will make your life easier. So we're coming up to the corner where we fastened the last coloring off, and so chaining 1. So here's where it is, and because we wrapped around that gap, when I go to put this stuff in, see, it's going to trap it even more with this string, so you can be assured that it won't unravel on itself, because it's really, because you know, crochet is like knots, really endless knots. So let's chain 1 going into the corner for a 3-2-3 configuration. 1 and 2, and then another 3. So just because I'm changing the colors exactly where I am, you have the power to change the colors even more if you want to. If you just want your centers to be a different color, you can just use the same techniques of fastening on and off, like I've already demonstrated. So just because I'm doing the coloring scheme this way doesn't mean that you have to as well. This is just a standard granny square, really. It's not really a traditional one because it's got a center that is a circle. But it's just a standard template, so it's just something that you can continually play with. And especially if you have scrap yarn, it might be kind of cool to change even all of the lines to be different from each other, if that appeals to you or not. So we're on the corner again for a 3-2-3 configuration. And back in the corner. You will find that each square, and it turned out for me that almost every square cost me about 15 minutes to 20 minutes of my time. And it all depends how good the movie was at that moment if I looked up during that square making. But I found it did go faster if you do everything in sections, just like I've explained earlier. So do a lot of the circles at the same time. You know, put the circles down and then come do another set of something else, and then come back and maybe do the white area, and then put it down and then come back and do it. And it kind of makes it a lot easier when you have